Still a better werewolf movie than Twilight. Teen Wolf, the movie. Now, if you don't know, this is apparently the conclusion, I guess, though not really, considering they just came out with a secondary show called Wolfpack. This is the supposed finale to the MTV show Teen Wolf that ran from 2011 to 2018, I believe. And before you ask, no, I have not seen the show. I have seen one long video essentially breaking down the show, so I know the gist of it. So I knew enough to be able to go into this movie without being completely blind. And this was also the show was originally based on a 1985 movie starring Michael J. Fox, which was very, very different, and no, I haven't seen that either. So this is basically the first time actually watching one of these. Like I said, I saw a video that broke down the entire series, but I've never seen a single episode of it myself. So this is essentially my introduction to it. And I've already been having a shit week, and I was assuming this was just going to be the epitome of that. I assumed this was just going to be an unbelievable dumpster fire of a movie, especially since the trailers were god-awful. The trailers made this movie look like a boring edgelord piece of shit. Now, it's not that. It's honestly not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. Don't get me wrong, it's still bad. It's not a well-made movie, but it's not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. The bare essentials are there, sort of. At least most of the acting is fine. It's just the actors from the original show with, I believe, one or two new additions just made for the movie. One thing I did notice about this movie, though, is that because for the season 6 finale, they were fighting a villain who was named Monroe. I saw a video, so I know all about it. And there was apparently a flash forward during that show, at the end of that show, that claimed that she was still around. She does not make an appearance in this movie whatsoever, and that was kind of odd. But honestly, I couldn't care less. From what I heard, that storyline was garbage, so from what I've seen, so yeah. This takes an entirely new story, and it takes place roughly, it claims 15 years after season 3, so a little over a decade after the end of the show. And you can tell they really tried to keep with continuity in that case, because they do weird makeup effects on all of the actors to make them look even older than they are, because the show only ended about 4 years ago, and the actors are supposed to be another decade older, because it especially it didn't really dawn on me when Tyler Posey first showed up, but when Holland Roden, who plays Lydia, the second she showed up, I knew something was off, because she had recently been in something I didn't really watch. But she looked normal. Here, she looked way older, and I realized they had done some makeup effects on her. They do the same thing with most of the actors who played teenagers in the original, even though they were in their mid to late 20s when they were casted in those roles. So, the main plot of this is that they sort of resurrect Allison, and they also resurrect the Nogitsune from season 3. And that right there, I don't remember the Nogitsune actually being advertised in the movie. I think I only saw the one trailer. If he was in another trailer, I don't really know. But that tipped me off to what this movie was going to be right off the bat. It was going to be something that desperately tried to recapture Season 3, because from what I've heard, Season 3, especially 3B, which featured the Nogitsune as the villain, is supposed to be top-tier level teen television. It's supposed to be an actual great season of television compared to the rest of the show, which ranges from okay to absolute shit. So I could already tell from the second he showed up in the very first scene that that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to recapture Season 3. And that kind of worried me. And that is a main problem I have with this movie. It tries way too hard to be edgy. It tries way too hard to be dark, and it tries to be a Zack Snyder movie for some reason. They throw in meaningless F-bombs. There's as much blood as possible. They throw in nudity just for the sake of it. It's not needed. Both of those scenes that involve nudity were completely pointless. Or at least involving it could have been pointless. If you've seen the movie, you know what I mean. And something else I have to bring up is the runtime. Now, before I watched the movie, I looked it up. I looked it up on the different sites to see what the general consensus was. Like, I looked at IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, and on Rotten Tomatoes, it claimed the runtime was an hour and 17 minutes. So, I originally thought, oh, this is going to be a breezy movie. I can get through it just like that. I started the movie, and the runtime was not 1 hour and 17 minutes. It was 2 hours and 20 minutes. But, surprisingly enough, I did not feel that runtime. Mostly because there was way too much shit going on, but I'll get back to that in a second. But I didn't really feel the length. Compare that to something like West Side Story from last year, or a little over a year ago, where it was 2 hours and 30 minutes. For the first half of it, I didn't really feel it, but the second half, I really started to feel it drag. Here, I kind of started to feel it in the last 45 minutes or so, but it wasn't really like I'm sitting here thinking, oh my god, how much longer is this movie? It was more of just, dear god, how much, it's more of me just thinking, like, really? I still have 45 minutes left? It wasn't really, I was like looking at the runtime and going, like, ugh, like I did with Zack Snyder Justice League or Avatar The Way of Water, where I was constantly groaning every single time I'd check my watch, or in this case, the time bar on my phone, because it went to streaming. So it wasn't like that, but when there was about 45 minutes left, I checked the bar, and that was the point where I realized how fucking long this movie was. But honestly, like I said, the pacing in this movie isn't that bad. It could be improved. I do think they could have cut it down to maybe 2 hours, because a bunch of the characters split off and do their own thing. And one of those plots in particular ends up being kind of pointless. It revolves around the guy who released the Nogitsune, and who's apparently their old chemistry teacher. Again, I haven't really actually seen the show, so I don't really know how big of a part he played in the TV show, if any, or maybe he could have just shown up at some point, I don't know. But Lydia and Jackson, who's in this movie for some reason, I'll get back to the characters in a bit, they go off in this entirely different side quest. They don't really tell us anything we don't already know until the big reveal of the guy in the hood, who happens to be their old chemistry teacher. And again, that twist was just kind of lame. But to the characters, Scott's still likable enough. They do a Pet Sematary thing with Allison, and it works well enough, I guess. Lydia's fine. Jackson's still obnoxious. I don't know why he's in this movie. I really don't. He left the show after season 2, and from what I could tell, the show was better off for it because his character was very uninteresting. Here, he does one thing that's useful in the beginning. He spends the rest of the movie being an annoying nuisance, and then does one helpful thing at the end where he basically gives Lydia a pep talk. That's his entire contribution to he's able to put together a puzzle, and he's able to give a pep talk. That's his entire contribution to this 2.5-hour movie. He spends the rest of the time making bad jokes and being fucking clueless because he wasn't around for season 3, so he doesn't know what any of this shit is. That was a long one to get out. And notably missing cast members are, of course, Dylan O'Brien. I am honestly surprised they did not bring him back. I don't remember seeing anything saying that they actually tried to get O'Brien and he said no. I mean, he probably would have been a much heftier price tag than the rest of the cast because he has a career. And the reason he left Teen Wolf in the first place is because he was busy shooting Maze Runner: The Death Cure. But from what I could tell, he probably could have made room in his schedule for this movie, because it's not like this movie would have been filmed for that. I don't think this movie was filmed that long. He probably could have made room in his schedule for it, or they probably would have shifted filming around to get him in the movie. And they do mention Styles many times in the movie, but every single time they do a flashback scene, they are very careful to not show Styles. Even when there are scenes that I guarantee had Styles in it, they either cut the screen off to where he's not in it, or they very carefully pick and choose shots that he was not in. He is not in this at all. From how many times they brought up his name, how many times they mentioned him, I half expected him to kind of show up in a cameo in the last scene or something. He didn't. But I had that thought in the back of my head because of how many times they kept bringing him up. Also missing is Arden Cho, though we do throw in some other kitsunes. One of them is some random cop that gets killed off after one scene of screen time, and another kitsune who doesn't really do anything. And that's something else this movie has a problem with. This has too many characters. So many of these characters don't get shit accomplished. Like, there's an entire subplot with Scott's mother and Alex's father and Peter Hale. They're, like, helping track Allison, but they don't really do anything. All they're doing is following Scott the entire time. And while he's off fighting Allison or trying to bring her back and everything, they're just kind of just following his trail, not doing jack shit. And I like Tyler Hoechlin as Derek. He's always fun to watch, and his son Eli's introduced in this movie, and I thought he was going to be an annoying piece of shit. Thankfully, he wasn't. The actor plays it pretty well. I thought the Wolfpack thing, the new TV show with Sarah Michelle Gellar, I thought that was supposed to be like a sequel show to this. Like, I thought Eli was going to be like the main character of that show. From what I could tell, he's not even in it, so I don't really know what the point of this guy even was. But, and it sounds like I'm giving the movie high praise, but there are other drawbacks as well. The Nogitsune is not terrifying anymore. In Season 3, he was the real deal. He was intimidating. He was incredibly intelligent. Here, his plan just doesn't make a ton of sense, and at the end of the movie, he's just a generic punching bag for the three wolves. Like, he possesses the power of the wolves, sheds his actually really creepy design for some shitty-looking hairless wolf design or whatever the fuck it was, and it wasn't intimidating. It looked... And speaking of looking silly, that when Derek, Eli, and Scott all go into their werewolf transformation, they look ridiculous with the ears and the sideburns and everything they do with it. They look fucking silly. And the fight scene at the end of the movie was absolutely lame. The resolution was kind of rushed. It didn't really... nothing in this movie really clicks that well. That seems to be the main problem. Like, the pieces are there, but they don't entirely... Like, if they need to click like this, they're kind of clicking like this. Like, they're there, but they can't quite form the whole picture, if you know what I mean. So, that's really all I got for this. I'm going to give Teen Wolf a C-. Again, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Had it had a few minor adjustments, probably would have made this movie a hell of a lot better. But as is, it's just meh. So, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye.